Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to day two of the Krulak Center for Innovation and Future Warfare's Innovation Summit. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the beginning of our next group of student briefers from Command and Staff College and Expeditionary Warfare School. Our first briefer is going to be Captain Trevor Shimulunas, who just happens to be the Krulak Center's Innovation Award winner. He actually didn't know that until I told him just a few minutes ago. So congratulations to you, Trevor, for everything that you've done this year and for your for your nomination and receiving the award on behalf of Expeditionary Warfare School. So we'll have a ceremony to present that to you later on, but it gives me great pleasure to actually introduce you as the award winner to the world.
Thank you very much, sir.
So our first couple of briefers today are going to explore some logistics delivery systems, which are pretty exciting. And I'm sure there are people out there that are anxious to try and continue to run with some of the research and projects that you have started exploring. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you to explain what it is that you discovered this year.
Thank you, sir. Morning, everybody. EWS, nice to see you. Quiet down over there in classroom 2. Captain Trevor Shimulunas. I'm an artillery officer by trade, coming from 1st Anglico most recently, but I spent time out in 29 Palms at 311 and 34 as well. Before I begin, I do want to take a moment to wish to my Australian and New Zealand counterparts out there, I hope you had a restful Anzac Day yesterday. And with that, I'll launch into unmanned logistical glider systems, which is how I see resupplying the stand-in forces during EABO is going to work. So this is the agenda. I'll go over essentially my train of thought throughout my research project and how we wound up where we did. So to start off with, the problem, as I saw it, is that distributed operations across the Pacific during expeditionary advanced space operations, it's going to stretch our logistics capability beyond what we're currently able to do, especially when you start looking at multiple islands, multiple logistics hubs, and multiple stand-in force locations. This creates a real problem. Everybody knows that a military fights on its stomach, and that remains so in hot and humid weather. So with that, what do we have currently available, and does it meet the mark? My answer is no. We've got traditional aerial delivery, and we also have maritime resupply. So with our traditional aerial resupply, we're going to be looking at things like C-130 dropping a containerized delivery system out the back, CH-53 or an MV-22 landing in a position and dropping off palletized or non-palletized methods of resupply. And both of those come with a risk to the stand-in force. Beyond that, we also have maritime resupply, such as anchoring a ship offshore and rowing things into our forces on the beach. And neither of those are really going to meet the mark, especially in a contested and denied environment like the contact layer. Reasons why we wouldn't want to use helicopters to resupply the stand-in force. I am of the opinion that we don't want every asset in the stand-in force to be known. In the academic year, we discussed what does EABO really look like, and some of the thought processes would be that deterrence is based on our enemy's ability to know what capabilities we bring to the fight, and by them knowing where and what we have, that's going to prevent them from doing something. I have more of a World War II Coast Watchers idea in mind, where maybe our larger assets, the adversary knows what we have available, but they don't know exactly where our sensors and shooters are. And with that, we cannot be telegraphing the location of the stand-in force by conducting a rotary wing landing zone every other day to drop off food and chow and water. Beyond that, the vulnerability within the WES that we're going to be existing in, if you have a rotary wing asset flying in and landing, they are within range of our adversary's weapon systems, and they can and will be engaged when the contact layer moves into the blunt layer. And that is a self-repeating problem, because if you look at every asset that we've got, the CH-53, the MV-22, every loss of one of those methods of resupply exacerbates the logistical problem, because we lose every subsequent mission that aircraft could have performed. And then we start getting into an attrition rate with pilots and aircraft. Meanwhile, the stand-in force is getting logistically weaker and weaker. Beyond that, we do have an unmanned method of delivery. It's called the JPADS, the Joint Precision Airdrop System. That gets us closer to the answer of what we're looking for. However, it only has an objective standoff of between 4 and 13 nautical miles, depending on the weight that you're putting out the back of the aircraft. So from that problem, namely, we don't have the organic capability to logistically resupply in EABO, I came up with the requirement that we need to be able to provide reliable, long-range, and cost-effective resupply within the enemy's weapons engagement zone without unduly providing risk to the stand-in force that's receiving resupply. And the solution that I came up with, well, I didn't come up with it, the solution that I'm trying to highlight is that we need to continue to develop unmanned methods of resupply for use in aerial delivery and highlight the cost effectiveness and range and low detectability of those systems. So, sir, here are the solutions that I have discovered. A little bit of historical background. The gliders that I'm about to tell you about did not just come into being 15 years ago. As a matter of fact, we've been using World War II or gliders since World War II. On the left-hand side of the screen there, you have the CG-4A Wacko glider. That was used with great success throughout many of the campaigns in World War II. And the inspiration for me looking into the current glider systems is actually my great uncle, who's pictured here on the table next to me. He was a glider pilot, and he was killed in action during the aerial invasion of Burma in 1944. So if we look on the left-hand side of the screen, that glider there is capable of carrying up to 3,600 pounds, which is also equivalent to about 13 troops in the back with all of their kit and ammunition and food. It has a glide ratio of 12 to 1. And when I'm talking about glide ratio in this presentation, basically it's 12 feet of forward motion for every 1 foot of altitude. These would be towed behind a large plane like the C-47. They would be towed within the objective area and then released, and then they would coast down into their objective. Difficult, especially considering the enemy had anti-aircraft weaponry then, just as they do now, and it was often a very dangerous mission. On the right-hand side of the screen, we have a modern solution, which looks very similar to the World War II equivalent. That is the LG-2K glider, which is developed by Logistics Gliders Incorporated. This glider is not to scale with the World War II equivalent on the left, but it does have a slightly better glide ratio and can carry, right now, up to 1,600 pounds. The benefit of this system is that it's currently GPS guided, so it's precision drop. It has increased glide ratio, and it has a standoff from the objective of up to 70 nautical miles is what the company is advertising. So if we do the math and it is released at approximately 25,000 feet, that's going to get us about 54 nautical mile distance from the release point. And when you're looking at 1,600 pounds, without having to bring a helicopter or a C-130 further within the WES, I think that's a real benefit. This is the competition right now. There's other unmanned systems that we're looking at using right now. Sir, have you ever heard of the K-MAX helicopter?
Yeah.
So the same company that developed the K-MAX is also developing the Cayman unmanned aerial vehicle, and they are advertising that again as a really usable unmanned system capable of delivering beyond the horizon logistical resupply out to 800 nautical miles, or correction, 500 plus nautical miles, carrying up to 800 pounds. From their own website, I know that the distances are a little bit difficult to read, but we have a decrease in weight capacity with an increase in range. So when they're saying 800 pounds, they're not going 500 miles without external fuel. They're going maybe 200 miles at 200 pounds at 300 nautical miles, 300 pounds at 326 nautical miles, and so on. So when we're comparing the reusability of the Cayman with the one-way trip of the LG-2K, we see more weight but less usage. Now, is that a problem? I don't happen to think so, because when we're looking at the LG-2K glider, one-way shot is also being produced for a very low cost. The company is having the goal of the same cost as the containerized delivery system, which right now runs between $4,500 to $11,000 for a one-way shot. The Cayman, I haven't been able to find any information on how much they think that will cost, but it's essentially a medium-sized helicopter that's going to be flying in and out of the WES. With that, I'd like to talk about the LG-2K and what it would actually provide. With the glider system, we're looking at a very low radar cross section. The angles and the size, I'm not an engineer. Basically, it is less likely to be detected by an enemy radar as it's on its flight trajectory going into the landing zone. One shot means only one opportunity for the enemy to discover it. So that's an increased benefit to the stand-in force because there's less opportunity for a helicopter landing and taking off, less telegraphing to the enemy around. It has a low acoustic signature. It's silent when it's flying through the air, and the only noise is going to be coming from the landing. Additionally, as they're being designed for single use, our troops on the ground could get additional utility out of the platform itself. They could cannibalize it and turn it into stretchers. Additionally, because they're single use, we could use them as a deception method. Our Marine Corps aircraft systems are currently designed to carry these because they were being worked with Marine Corps Warfighting Lab. They can release multiple gliders at once, have some of them filled up to deliver resupply to the troops on the islands, and have some of them purposefully empty so that as they're flying through the air, we've got a glider swarm. And if the enemy's picking some of them up, they might not be picking up the right ones. With that is going to be an even more increased level of survivability for the stand-in force. I want to highlight that this research exists. We've been using gliders, as I said, for the last 80 years, but specifically Logistics Gliders Incorporated. We had been working these contracts since approximately 2015, 2016 with the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab. As that stands, they are currently, the company has currently fielded test subjects with the intent of being deployed from C-130s, MV-22s, and CH-53s. So this research exists, but why aren't we using it? And I think it's really just a problem of timing. Back in 2018, the Advanced Technological Investment Plan listed the TACAD, Tactical Aerial Delivery Glider, as one of its lines of effort. And then I was looking at the 2020 investment plan, and it is no longer there. If we're looking at what was happening in 2018 and we're still in Afghanistan, the logistics resupply is not really as big of an issue as maybe originally we saw it being. Maybe the TACAD or the LG-2K glider fell off the radar, so to speak, just in time for us as a Marine Corps to start talking about expeditionary advanced base operations. And if that's the case, this research is not gone, it still exists. I think that we should take a serious look at reinvesting in this contract and continuing to develop these systems. Sir, do you have any questions right now?
So you mentioned the fact that it's single use, but if recoverable, do you think it's something that they could use so we could get multiple uses because Marines are notoriously cheap? So as stand-in forces are there in the competition phase, so short of conflict or high-end competition, even though the EABs may not necessarily want to be discovered, there should be multiples of them as they're moving around. So as they're moving around and they have the opportunity perchance to drop off this glider back with another resupply node or another unit that can then get it back to the rear, you think there's potential for them to be reusable?
Yes, sir. There is great potential for them to be reusable. Right now, the prototypes that are currently developed are intended to be single use, but there is historical parallel to can we reuse a glider? Gliders are fragile, and one of the things that keeps them cost effective is the fact that they're made of wood and cloth. However, even during World War II, they had attached essentially a tow bar to the nose of the glider, and if that glider landed whole, a C-47 would swoop in over it and grab it with a tow wire and yank it back up into the sky and then bring it back to base, and they could reuse that glider. With continued investment and development of this technology, I as a non-engineer don't see a reason why we couldn't do something similar, where if the glider were to land instead of a straight down profile and crush it, if it were to land in a coasting motion, why we wouldn't be able to also tow those gliders back to a resupply hub. The cost is not prohibitive, but I coming from an artillery unit myself, I fully understand utilizing something until it's well and truly gone.
We are notorious for that. After you head off to your next unit, do you plan to continue pursuing this or try and championing this? Because since you'll be on that coast, we also have the Marine Corps Logistics Operations Group that I'm sure would probably be interested in helping to explore this further if they aren't already.
I would be very interested in continuing the discussion on what gliders can provide for us. My next duty station is going to be Camp Pendleton and 111, so at some point battery command I think is in my future, at which point my extracurricular activities may drop off the deep end there. But right now in my spare time I continue to research. I'm a member of a volunteer research group that highlights and memorializes glider pilots from World War II, and that's partly what got me interested into these systems as it stands. And certainly once I hit the Fleet Marine Force, I think that it's a greater opportunity to engage with the logistics networking folks that I've met out here. I have some DoD contractors also that were helping inform my research, and just continuing the conversation on where these systems stands, as well as does the Marine Corps pick this up and start talking about it. I think the potential is definitely there for me to continue this conversation, sir.
Absolutely. Perfect. Okay. At this point, we'll open it up to any questions from the audience, either virtual or live. Sir, got any?
Excuse me. Sir, you mentioned that gliders were going to be towed by large aircraft, but I may have misheard. Was that the World War II, or is that also the model for these ones that you're talking about?
Yeah, so towed by the large air, the gliders in World War II were towed by C-47s. And we're not looking at that, but we don't have that aircraft anymore. But yes, they could be towed by the C-130. They could also be towed by the CH-53 or the MV-22. The benefit here is that we're not going to have to get as close to the objective as they had to in World War II. They're going to be able to have a greater objective standoff distance.
And second question is GPS guidance, so that the thing is going to be based like not exactly a UAV, but sort of, kind of like it's going to have like a course correction system or something.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Yes, it's got a GPS guidance system on it, so as it's flying, it's able to receive corrections to make it to the objective.
That's what it's going to be constant. Okay.
Which could cause an issue, and that was one of the counterpoints that I mentioned in my paper. When we're looking at expeditionary advanced base operations, we're almost certainly going to move to a GPS denied or degraded environment. I have not seen any discussion from the company on what the next step of positioning is going to be and guidance is going to be, but already we do have other options to GPS out there. Maybe it looks like something like an inertial navigation system prior to taking off, and it's constantly updating itself. There are other things out there, but right now that is a known downfall. Right now is that they're advertised only as GPS guidance. But I don't know what the company has in store. That might be one of those things that I can continue to look into after hitting the fleet, sir.
And that's where, like, if picked up as a project, I'm sure, and the capabilities development, that would be something that they identify. And as you said, there are plenty of other technologies that are being explored to try and overcome that or provide multiple options to overcome that shortfall.
And that's certainly a good thing too, is that we're not the only ones having the conversation on, hey, GPS may not be available. So as other things are being developed, it's going to fall in line with this research.
Okay. Any other questions?
So for the Cayman, how is that actually powered?
I don't have the technical specifications on me. I'm not sure. I'm sorry, sir, but I can find out and get back to you.
Like, I'm just asking you that, is it a power system?
Apologize for the virtual audience. They're asking how it's powered for those who may not be able to hear. Sorry.
Specifically for the Cayman, that unmanned quadcopter. I'm not sure on the engine style, sir, but I can get back to you on that. It did, the website did mention that beyond 500 nautical miles, it would require an external fuel source. So I would guess conventional.
Yeah, I was curious if there had been any research done into like the utility of using like a ESOL capability. That you could have an electronic that can be charged by solar panel. Facilitate that.
Using some sort of renewable energy. Okay.
No. They might look into that after watching this webcast, sir.
All right. Looks like we have a question from EWS.
This is Captain Edwards from CG7 at EWS. What are the risks associated with visual discovery for a platform this large, particularly at the landing site? What does the landing site look like, and what's your assessment of the risk of visual discovery, maybe from like satellite imagery?
To clarify, are you discussing visual discovery of the glider or the Cayman helicopter?
Either or, glider, the helicopter, and they both got to have a landing site or some way to land. So what's the risk of discovery at the landing site?
I think that the risk of discovery, specifically for the glider, is going to be a lot less than for the quadcopter, specifically just because the glider makes less noise as it's coming down. And additionally, it only has to make a one-way trip, so it's just got to shoot straight down. Whether that's falling through a tree canopy or landing in a small clearing, it's just one way down, as opposed to the quadcopter, which is going to, with 4 blades on either side, it's going to require a little bit more of a deliberate landing zone. And additionally, after it lands and offloads or offloads from a low hover, it's still going to need to take off again. Specifically looking at the glider, though, as the basis of my research, the campaign that my uncle was in, they had gliders that went down through triple canopy, and the glider and crew still survived, albeit the glider was worse for wear. So as far as needing to have a large dedicated landing zone, I don't see that as a requirement for the fully fielded TACAD glider. But certainly the Discovery is going to be more of an issue, I think, as it's approaching the objective rather than once it's on the objective. Because again, we're talking about a relatively smaller vehicle than the World War II equivalent. And I don't know what size islands the stand-in force may or may not be occupying, but I think it's safe to say we're not going to purposely resupply right on top of the stand-in force on that jungled island objective. They'll have to do a little bit of a patrol, and it's a big big jungle, little vehicle, so to speak. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Looks like we had a question pop up in the chat. Can you go ahead and read it to us?
This is a really interesting idea since a glider has lower radar cross section, but the tow vehicle does not. Any thoughts on how to dispute the signature of the aircraft actions? Colonel Simmons.
Thanks for your question, sir. I'm not a pilot. The issue, though, of the tow vehicle is always going to be there, especially until we increase dramatically the objective standoff of the glider itself. I know in World War II they were experimenting with putting jet engines on the back of these CG-4A gliders. Never made it into a military designation, so that was not successful. However, technology's come a long way. The greatest thing, sir, that I think we can do to disguise the signature of the aircraft is to increase the standoff from the objective so that they're not penetrating as far within the WES. But specifically, when I was looking at this research project and looking at these expeditionary advanced bases, maybe the EAB is also the logistics hub, and these gliders are resupplying the stand-in force that are acting as the sensor nodes. With that in mind, as well as the fact that the adversary is going to have a weapons engagement zone that encompasses a lot of our forces in the area, our aircraft are, in my opinion, possibly going to be taking off already within the WES. And at that point, if we're still to the left of conflict, I think that it's going to be less of an issue for our adversary to detect an aircraft conceivably doing routine flight operations. And then still, while they're doing those routine flight operations, dropping off a couple of gliders out of the back, which then autonomously start going towards their resupply objectives, sir. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Okay. All right. Well, Captain Shimulunas, thank you very much, and congratulations again on receiving the Krulek Award for Innovation.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Education is what's important. Training, preparation for the expected. Education, preparation for the unexpected.